Passion. We've talked a lot about the Passion. We've talked about the time of Jesus preparing his disciples for his death, for the culmination of what it meant for him to be the humble servant, the following of Jesus. We've talked a lot about that. We talked last week at Easter about the resurrection of Jesus. Thank God for his resurrection. And someone on Slack said, hey, I think that the ascension is downplayed too much. Like there's something big that happens in the you see him go, and indeed he will return in the same way. And I think the Slack commenter was right. The Slack commenter is accurate because we need to recognize that there's more than just the death and resurrection. There's more than just the death and resurrection to Jesus. And so today we're going to finish up the book of John, the Gospel of John, but we're going to lean into a book that's attached to the Gospel of John, which people don't. It's the most controversial book in the Bible, I would say, because it's the book of Revelation, where we look at like what's coming. What of the death and resurrection? Where did it go? Where does it lead? What do we mean by it? And I think that what we're going to do today is we're going to see how these New Testament books that are paired together are able to come together for us. So where I want us to start is that the first century Jew, their faith, their entire faith, even before Jesus, this whole first century world, their entire faith is based on an eschatological hope, the eschatological hope. That is the hope of what God will do in the future. Their entire faith is built on this idea. What is God going to do in the future? Okay, so what type of music really speaks to you? What type of music gets to your soul? I want to hear this on Slack. What type of music actually affects you? And you can be honest, it's okay. If you're if you're born in the 80s or 90s, you might have grown up with R&B music, soft rock, the entry of pop music. Boy bands were big at that time. You might have loved that stuff. If it was a little bit earlier, then rock music may have really been your genre. Rock through all of its iterations. That might be your jive. When it comes on, something happens to you. It changes the way you feel and think. And what's your type of music? And it's really interesting that music itself forms people's ideals. In our culture, music shapes us. It shapes what we think about, what we meditate on. It shapes how we feel. It shapes our outlook. It shapes us. It's funny, you can tell a lot about a culture by listening to the music being produced. You can tell about their mental health. You can tell about their underlying beliefs. You can tell about a lot of things through cultural beliefs in music. Music forms these people's ideas, and it resonates with you. Oftentimes, if you're older, you have that music that you reflect on, and maybe your kids are like, why? Why are you listening to that? I did a funeral recently, and Elvis hymns were playing at this funeral, and it was like just playing on record and like through the picture loop, and it was just Elvis song after Elvis song after Elvis song, and I'm sitting there going like, okay, that was a lot of Elvis, but then I was reflecting what would get played at my funeral, and I was like, oh, nobody wants to hear that. So what really drives your style of music? Some people jazz, worship music, and Les Mis. Excellent. Country, screamo, praise and worship, 80s pop. Broadway, show tunes, folk, Classic. Ska. Oh yeah, I forgot about ska. Yeah, this is what happens. EDM, interesting. There's a whole genre, right? So what type of music gets you? Now, what we can do with all of this, techno, awesome. I love that. I don't even know what prog metal is. I'm not gonna lie. Somebody's got to post a link. Check that out later. Beethoven, excellent. So the type of music that you get is actually really important for how you resonate with the world around you. Now, we have the benefit of having canned music. It's recorded, it's on demand. I mean, if you're a younger generation, you get all the types of music whenever you want, which means that the younger generation doesn't have a homogenous type of music. They have subcultures of music. Whereas if you're older, there was more of a homogenous type of music. This is the type of music your generation listened to. And that's actually an interesting social comment as well. But in the first century, it wasn't music that shaped people per se, not like it does now. They had psalms and repeated songs that they would sing, like ballads and stuff, but it was actually stories. In the first century, they were called an oral tradition. And being an oral tradition, they would speak the same stories verbatim. They would tell the stories that everybody knew, and it was the same thing, and you're like, why would you listen to the same story again and again? Well, for the exact same reason you put a song on repeat. It does the same thing, where it resonates and it speaks truth and it informs and it creates a cultural narrative that says this is who we are. And so the stories that the Jews in the first century grew up immersed with were stories where God's victorious day, when he would come and reign on King David's hill called Mount Zion, the stories were told well. They were formed and they were complete and they were formative. The same story. You would hear, tell me again how this is going to happen. Tell me again of the hope that's going to be. Tell me in a different way, vary it slightly, give me a slightly different angle on it, but this is the story that resonated truth in much the same way that music does today. The story that they used to tell has a name, and it is the eschatological hope. The hope of the last days, the hope of the end times. Shaped everything about how you think and feel and interpret the world around you. Now we've upgraded from such rich history to TikTok. When Jesus came and died and resurrected, these events could only be understood through the context of the story, through the context of that story that was told again and again and again and again, a story of hope and Jesus coming, or the Messiah coming and restoring all things. So this is why at the end of John 21 and 23 says, when Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, Lord, what about this man? And Jesus said to him, if it's my will that he remains until I come, what's that to you? You follow me. So the saying spread abroad among the brothers that this disciple was not to die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not about to die, but if it's my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? See, this verse happened as Jesus had been resurrected already, and they were sitting and eating breakfast together on a beach. And the eating itself is a sign of proof of life, but it's not my point today. The point is these verses are so eschatologically loaded. We have to realize that Jesus is identifying and assuming everybody knows something here. They know that these disciples know that, oh, this is the Messiah. He's resurrected. And implicit in this is if it's my will that he remain until I come. It's the promise of coming. I mean, he was already present. So he wasn't talking about his resurrection. He's talking about a coming, a hope that now resonates with the story that they have grown up with. The story that you and I have grown up with in different ways. The hope that God will come and dwell among his people and he will make everything right. So the hope is for today. The eschatological hope is still in the future. We haven't yet seen Jesus return and restore all things. So, but we did see, this was what was unbelievable and hard to work out. We did see Jesus die and rise again. So the hope is both still in the future and realized right now. Jesus has risen from the dead. This is certainly the sign of the end of the age, when God is making all things right. This is most certainly the sign right now. But also, he said he's coming. So there's a piece that's attached to this, that Jesus will return, and that is important. How? How is he going to do this? So today is about talking about the end times, the hope that we have, and I hope to move the needle on us from talking about the end times through a lens of fear and despair to a lens of hope and celebration. See, in the 80s and even the 70s, but the 80s really leaned in. You would know if you were a Christian at that time, if you were around at that time, then you would know that everybody talked about the return of Jesus. 88 Reasons to Believe Why Jesus Will Return in 1988. Actually a title of a book. Actually wrong. And all of the language was couched in a fear concept that somehow Jesus was going to return and catch you doing something bad. And you would be the sum of judgment. If you were in a movie theater, it was said in some circles, don't be in a movie theater, because if Jesus returns while you're in a movie theater, as you try to ascend to join him in the clouds, your head will hit the top of the roof and you will be knocked down back into your seat. That was a good one. Or one day you'll just be at school or at work, and if you look up in the sky, there will be Jesus with a whole host of armies all around you, and it will be terrifying. And fear became the language in which we spoke of the return of Jesus, and how did we get here? There are eschatological narratives all throughout the Bible. The Bible is full of them. In fact, all the New Testament is written while they're trying to figure out, what does it mean that Jesus has returned, or Jesus resurrected now? They're trying to figure that out. So as they move forward, the early church, the Christians, stop. The Christians, they saw that Jesus' return is the best thing that can happen to them and for the world. It would be all things being made right. The shalom of the whole earth, the destruction of evil. Over the years, though, the Christians started identifying themselves as the problem. They started seeing that the movies that they watched were the problem. If you're on Slack, you understand. So they start to see themselves as the problem. You are the reason that the world is screwed up. That was ultimately the Christian narrative. Slap you upside the back of the head, get better, do better, try harder, so that when Jesus returns, you're going to be good enough. Well, the fear of judgment created a fearful message of Jesus' return. Okay, so if you think about the end times, you think about the return of Jesus, you think about time coming to an end and judgment day happening and all of that stuff, what emotion does that inspire in you? Does it inspire fear? Does it inspire confidence? Does it inspire hope? What does that image, the thought of Jesus' return, Jesus said, I am coming. What does that image of Jesus' return inspire in you? See, there was a hope that was corrupted. Jesus was coming to purify the world of you and all that you do wrong. He's coming to make everything right, which means you who are not right are the fearful one. We know our guilt too well. God becomes a threat. Instead of us believing that we are redeemed, we started to believe that we are the judged. And today, look at the story of Jesus, and I want us to see a hope that inspires. John finishes his gospel so that you will believe, but he's not finished the eschatological story. He continues that in the book of Revelation. The hope that John portrays is imminent. Someone writes on Slack the picture, Jesus coming, look busy. That's that anxiety that we have around Jesus' return. We have a certain anxiety around it that's like, what is it? So John portrays the hope that Jesus' return is imminent. Revelation 1:3, blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of the prophecy. Blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written, for the time is near. So what are the emotions that everybody has? It inspires fear, shame, a little bit of hope, fear, hope, relief. Interesting. I didn't give that as an option. Good job. And a bunch of people saying it inspires the same. Somebody said that I think the fear part is more about the number of loved ones who won't be with us. So we have this piece of like fear and hope, but the hope should be reinstated. The vision that John recounts for us is a vision of God's promises coming to happen. The course correcting for God's faithful people. The defeat of God's enemy. Remember, God's enemy is not you. God's enemy is Satan. The judgment of those who hate God. The spirits that hate God, and those who join in the hatred of God, the rebellion of God, the people that do join in the rebellion of God. The vindication of those who put their faith in Jesus, and the shalom, the deep peace that comes from God's decisive action. The hope of our faith is eschatological. It's built in the future. It's built in a place where, no, it's not yet happened yet. I know as I look over the congregation right now that we have struggles and trials of all kinds, that it hasn't come to pass yet, that the evil in this world has not yet been removed. I know that that is true, and the hope that I have is one day, soon and very soon, Jesus will return and make all things right. The hope that I have, that I hold on to, the reason that I can keep on fighting against the evil in the world and not be so overwhelmed by it, is the hope that Jesus will return and make all things right. So what is the hope that you look forward to? How would you articulate that? We look back on the Gospels because they show us how Jesus defeated Satan and restore the epicenter of God's order on earth. We celebrate that, and we would be totally lost in the chaos of the world without that anchor in our past. But our hope is not a hope that has already been seen. Our hope is in the future. Hebrews 11:13-18 said, all these died in faith. He had just listed a whole group of people. Not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. You too are strangers and exiles on the earth. That's why we gather. We keep that identity. For those who speak thus must make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. They have been thinking of that land from which they'd gone out. They would have the opportunity, if they had been thinking about the land they'd gone out, they'd have the opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Paul writes it like this, 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. So we do not lose heart. Although our outer selves are wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light and momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. We look not to the things that are right now, that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. What is the hope that you look forward to? Someone says, I look forward to the peace of evil being, and all evil things being removed. No more loss, no more mourning. I look forward to everything being restored. Discovering what is our privilege or responsibility, reigning and ruling with Jesus forever. A healed body and mind, reunion with loved ones. I look forward to just hanging out with the angels and worshiping. These are some of the hopes that we have when Jesus returns. We have a living hope. It is a living hope that we have. Revelation's written all about this hope. I'm going to give you a brief outline of the book of Revelation, just so that we're not actually going to dive into Revelation. I'm just going to give you hey, this is kind of the structure of Revelation so that you can understand it. Some people get into reading Revelation and they're like, oh, well, this means this and that means this, and drawing all types of conclusions and timelines. That's how we get to books like Jesus is going to return in 1988, and here's 88 reasons why. So I would encourage you not to read Revelation like that. I would encourage you to read Revelation something like this. Revelation 2 and 3. John says the churches are going to be challenged. And there are 7 ways that a church can be led astray. And we need to watch ourselves. At a retreat, actually, we're going to be taking a breakout group, and we're going to be looking at the 7 ways that a church can be led astray and how we need to watch ourselves. Revelation 4 to 6 is John's vision in the throne room of God and what's happening in the throne room of God. Revelation 7 is God's faithfulness to his people. This is important. Revelation 7 is God's faithfulness to his people. Every tribe, every nation, every tongue gathered to worship God. Revelation 8 to 13 is God's wrath against the evil in the world. And it's interesting because this is actually how the whole message gets skewed. Because what we do is we say that that you have to make sure that you're not part of the terrible wrath. But we forget that Revelation 7 was about God's people and his faithfulness to his people. But after Revelation 13, something strange happens. It's interesting. It seems to repeat itself again. Revelation 14 is God's faithfulness to his people. Revelation 15 to 18 is again another articulation of God's wrath poured out against evil in the world again. And people debate endlessly whether these are concurrent events or whether they're the same event told in a different way. I don't know. But I do know that God is faithful to his people, and you are his when you call upon the name of Jesus, and his wrath is poured out against all evil. I know that. I know that. Revelation 19 gives the total victory of God and the rejoicing of the people of God. And Revelation 20 and 21 show us the world made completely right and God ruling us as redeemed and vindicated. This is what John tells us about the eschatological hope. That story, like music, that resonates inside your heart, that says, this is what is true. I base my life on it. My life decisions are based that God will make all things right. 1 John 4:17-18. By this, love is perfected with us, so that we can have confidence for the day of judgment. Because as he is, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. And whoever fears has not been perfected in love. And for too long, the church hammered a drum that induced fear in people. And God is saying, no. You love me. I love you. There is no fear in this love, because that has to do with judgment. You have been forgiven by God's grace. You've been given a reason to hope. The eschatological hope is the center of God's good news. Jesus is coming back. He will remove all forms of evil from this world. And when you look to him, he will redeem you and restore you. And he will live with you forever. That hope. That hope. So, if someone says, I tend not to focus on this hope. The new world will be as good or better than the one I could ever think of. So I'll continue to live and serve God until that day comes, keeping it in the back of my mind that the world will work out eventually. And while that is good and helps us cope, there's another part about that now when we actually can articulate this hope, it can bring hope to a lost and dying world. I look at our culture and the need for a hopeful message in our culture. You listen to the music of the culture. Think about it. We started off with talking about music. Listen to the current music of the culture. And where's the hope? Where's the hope in the music of the culture today? Our culture today needs a reason to hope. A hopeful king who can come and who can parse out the difference between what is good and what is evil. Who can redeem you, that you too will be saved. You are not to be discarded. Our culture needs hope. Jesus will return. God will vindicate you. And God can and will take care and destroy the evil. So encourage each other with these words. Encourage each other. You can face the judgment of God because God's love has been perfected in you. Jesus perfected it by sacrificing his own life. You trust Jesus is indeed Lord and Savior, and he will work the salvation in you. Let me pray. God, I thank you. I thank you that you said that you are returning. When I am coming, Jesus, we look forward to your return. We see it as great hope, not just for us, but for all of humanity, which is burdened under such great evil. God, I pray that we would be people that can call out to others to say, come, there is a hope that the evil that you experience in the world can be made right, that things can be justly put back together, that you can be rescued from the evil. Jesus, I pray that as the world around us fears just about everything, God, I pray that we can speak hope rationally, eternally, in a way that builds life. In Jesus' name, amen.